This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Cindy, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar. I'm going to switch from the video now to the presentation. For those of you who've joined the webinar remotely, my name is Ted Fjellman. I'm the chair of the advisory committee of T-DEB, the Newton funded project through Innovate UK. All right, I am switching to presentation mode. Can everybody see my slides? There should be a slide called T-DEB program seen on your screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
Very good. All right, so moving to slide 2. This is what we are going to cover today. This is the webinar agenda. Today is the 22nd of January 2019, and this is the webinar for the healthcare cohort of the T-DEB program. But a lot of this information is relevant also to the other cohorts in case they do want to see this at a later stage. So we'll cover
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, today we will give you a reminder of the T-DEB mandate. We are going to go through who is your audience. In other words, who are the people you're trying to contact, and a reminder of putting ourselves in their shoes. How to productively research UK companies. I then will talk to you about the two-pronged approach that we at TechU are taking, and we'll work with you on to find UK partners. So two-pronged meaning we're trying 2 different ways to find companies. And then we'll go into some more detail specifically about the introductory email and the follow-up and how to find partners. And then crucially, which a lot of people forget, the preparations after initial contact, when a company in the UK actually has expressed positive interest in you. That's really when you have to research in a lot more detail. So I'll give you some tips in that area as well. I'm conscious of the fact that a lot of you have experience working internationally. Some of you, a lot of what I'm going to be saying is quite common sense and straightforward. So I apologize for that in advance. But I think we have a mix of people in this cohort, people who have never been on these kinds of missions. So we'll really take it from the beginning. And in the Q&A session, which I want to give as much time as possible to, I think it's important that we even give each other tips as well. We are a cohort going together on this mission. It's not only myself and the TechU staff that can teach you, but I think there's a lot to be learned between the different companies who have various experiences. So let us think of this as a learning journey together to become better at finding partners, and hopefully you find really great partners at the end of it. Okay, moving to slide 3, we'll cover in this webinar how to productively research UK companies. And what I mean by that is how do you find out what those companies are really doing, how to make the best out of your R&D partnership based on that research. So in the end, we will talk about how to follow up with the companies and ask questions of them so that you really, when you meet them in person, you already have some questions and mutual interests to discuss. We will also talk about how to prepare effective partnering material. That means your material about your company in English. We'll also talk about how to reach out and successfully make contact with the UK companies. So some tips on what might and might not work in terms of email contact. And we have a specific flow that we believe, based on experience, will work the best, where there's a kind of a tag team approach between yourself and TechU, where what is important is that we don't create a situation where people feel like they're being chased. And I'll tell you a lot more about that as we get to that section. Let's move to just a quick reminder about the T-DEB program. Of course, you're all here because you want to find a UK partner to do R&D collaboration, and that's what we all must focus on in this first quarter of 2019, is to find a UK partner. Second point, once you have a partner, they will of course come to Turkey in September and October 2019, and together with you will join a partnership accelerator program. And if we have a little bit of time at the end of the webinar, we can talk a bit about that next step. But I think that's just to give you a flavor of the fact that, of course, this program is a long 2-year program. We're now not quite a year into it. So there are other parts of this that we have to remember when we contact people, the UK partners have the option and will come to Turkey as well. On the third point, only when you and your partner have decided that you will collaborate on something, that's when we'll initiate serious discussion about funding that R&D. So that's important to remember that at this point in time, we do not start the actual R&D. This program is about finding the partner, deciding what kind of collaborative project you want to have. And then at the end of 2019, we start a process that will culminate in a showcase in London in early 2020, sort of February, March 2020, where we invite a lot of investors and financiers, both dilutive and non-dilutive funding, so grant funders as well as investors, to come to a showcase. And at that point, we hope that both you and your UK partner have really gotten to know each other well through the accelerator program, and you have a very clear picture of what it is you're going to collaborate on, and that is what you're going to pitch to those financiers. Okay, let's get into the webinar. So in the following section on slide 5, you can see we'll try to put ourselves in the shoes of UK persons we want to gain contact with. It's really important for me, and I know I make this mistake all the time. I'm a busy executive of a company and I write a quick email based on what it is I want, but it's so important to remember who is it that I'm writing to, how will they see this, what is their time frame and their kind of viewpoint of me. So we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the people we're contacting. So who is your audience? Slide 6. We have to remember who the people are. The senior managers of UK companies, which we at TechU and you will be contacting now over the next couple of weeks, they get flooded with emails from within and outside of the UK. And we're all in the same boat. This is the 21st century. We get probably 100 or 200 emails a day, and it's difficult to get through all of them. But what is unfortunate is that the UK is quite spoiled. There's a large internal network of businesses and universities, and they're so busy just dealing with their national requests that I have to be honest here that international requests are viewed with more skepticism than national requests. So there is a hurdle to overcome there. When people see something coming from far away from the other side of the planet, or in this case, even just 4-hour flight away, that is just less of a priority to them than something coming from the University of Oxford or a company based in Cambridge or something like that. So, and of course, as with everyone, people always respond to getting emails from people that they already know. That's the only guarantee to get someone's time. And TechU is helping with that. We're going through various channels to reach companies through people that those companies already know. But we also have a process that we can follow to optimize your chances of contacting companies directly. But you must, of course, expect that only some of the people that you contact will actually get back to you. That doesn't necessarily mean that your request wasn't good. It's just a busy time, and people, things fall between the cracks. So the take-home message here is that we're going to have to contact a lot more companies than the companies we actually want to meet. I think that's clear to everyone. Okay, moving to slide number 7, and you will get a chance to ask any questions after each section, by the way. So on slide 7, one thing to remember is that people in the UK are monolingual for the most part. So you are already, all of you, far better at languages than anybody in the UK. But what that means, unfortunately, is that the UK people, the UK executives, they don't know what it's like to learn another language. I'm of course stereotyping. There are a few who know other languages and they understand and they are more forgiving. But many UK executives only know English, and they are quite prejudiced toward people that are not fluent, especially in their writing in emails. So it is important that you polish and reread any communiques before sending. And we at TechU are happy to look over something. And we will, as part of this webinar and later on, provide you with a template for emails that you can send so that your English is perfect and that you don't get put in the waste basket just because of that prejudice. So I do apologize on behalf of all of the UK executives in that regard, but that's just the truth, unfortunately. Okay, and finally on the audience, the third tip I'm giving here is that UK executives know very little about Turkey. They do likely only know what they see through the mass media. So that means that when you contact them, you're going to have to give a specific reference to any previous international interactions you have done. So I know some of you have sold some of your products internationally already. Some of you have made deals with large companies like Boehringer Ingelheim or other universities you've worked with or customers in Germany and so on. If you do have that, that's a really good thing to point out in an introductory email. And I'll get more to how you can say that in the following slides when we talk about the introductory email. But that sets you aside, and then they don't just look at where your company is based and say, oh, Turkey, I know little about that. I don't know, that sounds a bit risky. If you say, I've already been involved, we recently did a collaboration with such and such in Germany or such and such in Italy, or then that's a really big plus. We will, of course, highlight your achievements and opportunities, and in general, the achievements and opportunities that Turkey offers when we follow up with the UK company contacts. And that's why Nana, Cindy, and the rest of the team at Techie have spent a lot of time to really hone both your company profiles and the sections on the website that deal with why Turkey. So if you look at the T-DEB website, you'll see that that's geared in as crisp as possible way to the UK companies looking at that and saying, aha, Turkey is indeed a very large economy in the world. It's a growing economy. There are a lot of opportunities, a lot of universities and so on. But again, I just emphasize that the UK executives really know very, very little. If you mention, for example, ODTÜ or METÜ, or any of the big universities in Turkey, that literally means nothing to the UK executives. They don't know anything about it. And again, I can only apologize for this kind of international illiteracy, but that's the truth. Okay, before we move on to the next section, are there any questions so far on the slides?
No.
Okay, we'll leave the questions for the Q&A session, but please, as we go through this, note down any questions you have. I want to spend as much time as possible answering your questions so that I'm not just speaking about things that you already know. Okay, so it sounds like this is pretty straightforward and probably not news to you. So let's move on to the next section. In this section, we'll go through the process of finding out information about potential partners. And here I can rest upon what I myself did when we went to Mexico. It's almost 4 years ago now. We started the collaboration 3 years ago. But 4 years ago, I went to Mexico. It was a November month, and I only had about 2 months to prepare for the trip. This was run by the UK government at that time. And what I did is I very quickly just went on to the web, Googled basically biotech companies in Mexico. Obviously, I found a lot of international ones. I found the big pharma companies that had sales offices and so forth in Mexico, but I quickly discounted them because I knew that would be too big a thing for me to handle. For some of you working with really big companies, that will be fine. But for me at the time, it's just too big an organization. And I knew that from my perspective, the real research in my area was not actually in Mexico. It was in other countries. So what I wanted to find is good companies, medium size, maybe medium to large size, Mexican-owned biopharma companies. So I honed my Google search and found through my LinkedIn network as well different people that had some association with Mexico, and did my research one step at a time. I sent out a few emails to contacts that I knew had worked in Mexico before and asked what are some of the main players that work in that area. And I think that's what some of you have done as well to generate your list of interesting companies. Maybe you've already been on a conference in the UK, so all of the cards, the business cards that you collected, even if they are not relevant to you, you can send an email to one of those contacts and say, hey, I'm actually coming to the UK. you remember I'm working on this and that. Do you know any companies that you think are within that area? So, use your network as much as possible. And of course, I'll speak in more detail about what we at TechU are doing to find them. But at the time in Mexico, what I did is I also watched a lot of talks online. There are now a lot of obviously YouTube videos and so on, and presentations from various people, and often they mention or show the landscape of what's going on in a particular area. I find it also very useful to look at conferences, past conferences, because they often show the old agenda where they show presenting companies. So, for example, if you're in a health IoT space, maybe you can look at an old health IoT conference, you look at the agenda, you look at the companies that presented, and there you very quickly find out interesting companies that you might want to meet. So that's what I did. And before I went to Mexico, I had contact with actually only 3 companies. So very few actually, but they were very specific, and I already knew that those 3 companies were companies I wanted to talk to and that I had mutual interests with. So I would say, I can't remember exactly, but I say I probably reached out to about 20 different companies that I thought on paper or in the online research looked like a good fit. And then I ended up with 3 actual meetings during those 3 days that I was in Mexico. So I think we can do better than that this time around. I think you should have at least 4 or 5 meetings that are really specific. But you'll also meet other companies during the networking sessions, and maybe you'll get serendipitous contacts. But a really important point here is that don't rely on those serendipitous contacts. Don't rely on chance to find your companies when you come on the discovery trip with us. You have to have identified some specific companies that you want to meet before we go, and we have to have had contact with them and an exchange of some information before you go. Only then will you really have a very good partnering meeting during the 2.5 days that you are, or 3 days that you're here in the UK. Okay, so let's go back to the slide deck. We're still on slide 9 here, so let's switch to slide 10 and look at more detail on how you can productively research the UK companies. So the first thing I would do is set realistic goals for yourself and for your company. You have to ask yourself and your own management team, what kind of collaboration can our organization actually handle? So some of you wrote down big pharma or large corporations as your potential people you want to talk to. Now, if you are only 2 or 3 people in your company working, it is extremely unlikely that you're going to be able to handle a collaboration with someone like GSK or AstraZeneca or any of the large medtech companies, because the way they work is it's going to take a very long time to even set up a collaboration agreement or some sort of exchange, a CDA. You're going to need lawyers. Then when you actually run the collaboration, you're going to need a project manager, because there are going to be a lot of different people involved that you need to deal with on the big pharma side, because nowadays big pharma or any big company really works in mostly a matrix structure where they create project managers on their side and they have people in various departments working together on a specific project, especially if it's an innovative, different kind of project. They bring people from different departments, and it's really quite a managerial task to deal with that. So I would say if you've done it before, then you know what you're getting into. If you have never collaborated with a very large company before, I would stay away from that at this point and try to work with a medium-sized company, preferably a company that's larger than you, because then you'll learn a lot. But if they have very specific knowledge and know-how, then even a company that's smaller than you is obviously a good idea as well. Then the second bullet point here is about the goals, is how many of your rights, so the rights to your technology, are you willing to give away? And again, this impacts the type of organization that you're going to collaborate with. If you are thinking, I have my IP, I have my technology, all I want to do is to test it in some sort of setting in the UK, but I don't want to give away any rights at this point. I don't want to give away an option to license or something like that. then you're better off going with a non-commercial entity like an NHS trust. So that's the UK National Health Service, where maybe they have a hospital or a set of hospitals that would like to test your technology. That you can do without giving away anything. They will just be interested in testing it, and they, at the end of it, if it's interesting, they might become a customer of yours. That's possible. But if you're not willing to give away your technology, you're not going to be able to collaborate with a large company, because a large company or a very commercially oriented medium-sized company, they're going to want something at the end. They're going to want, for example, a 90-day period of first right of refusal to your technology, maybe for a particular indication. And again, you're going to need lawyers to decide whether you want to do that or not. So think in advance if you're ready to get into that kind of discussion. Because if you're not ready to get into that kind of discussion, then it's better to avoid the very large companies or the very commercially oriented. And finally, the last point here is, who will be the driving force in the future collaboration? Do you want to remain in control, or do you want, because you don't have enough staff or enough people, you want to give away that control to the other organization? We as TechU and Innovate UK as our funders, we're here to create collaborations between the UK and Turkey. We're working with you now, but actually we have an equal interest in the UK companies having a good collaboration as you. So we don't care who's in control. We just want you to find each other and have a good project that moves forward. So, but from your perspective, if I now put myself in your shoes, you have to think, am I ready to just materially transfer my gadget or whatever it is that you have, your technology, to another company and they run with it? Or do you want to actually, when you do a collaboration, be the people that control all the processes of what's being done and the research that's being done? Now, I think that is not so much a decision that determines who you contact, but it's something that you need to know before you meet them. Maybe you need to know it even before you start talking to them via phone or have a more in-depth email exchange, because they will wonder the same thing. Are they just, how much time and effort do they need to put into a collaboration? That's one of the first things that your counterparts in the UK are going to wonder. They say, is this worth my time? If there's very little time involved, then obviously you're more likely to get a partner, but that also means that that partner might also not be as dedicated. If you're willing to give away something at the end of it, you might find a much more dedicated partner that's going to take more control. That's just, we can go into more of that in the Q&A session if you have, because I know that's a complicated part of the equation. Finally, I say only spend time researching companies that are a very good fit for you. If you don't see through your online research on their website and so on that it's a really good fit, move on to the next company. And we'll get to the communication in a moment, but after you get a first positive reply, the research actually continues and should increase, and that's really important. When I went to Mexico, I spent a little bit of time finding out what these 20 companies that I contacted, were about. And then I sent emails relatively quickly, quite simple emails explaining who I was and what I wanted to them. And then as soon as I got a reply from them, that's when I actually spent a lot more time, reading up old publications that they had on their website, or actually looking up individuals on LinkedIn in a lot more detail. And then the second or third and fourth emails that I sent to them were a lot more detailed about the specifics of what we could do together. So once you have positive contact with the UK company, that's actually when the real research and finding out about them starts. So that's important to remember. And that is why you should only spend time researching companies that are a very good fit for you. Otherwise, you're going to be overwhelmed by a lot of work. Although I recognize that's a good problem to have, of course. Okay, next slide 11. So I suggest that you research the organizations in detail in two different ways. I've already spoken about this. One is to research the online material and prepare some questions. The UK companies, or I think any company anywhere in the world, is most interested and even flattered if somebody sends an email where they ask some insightful question about what they're doing. shows that you've actually done the research. So doing the research is one thing, but in your communication, in a very crisp and short way, you have to show them that you've actually looked them up. If you can get that across in your first email, then you're already halfway there. I myself, I know I get a lot of emails as CEO of the other company. If somebody says, "Dear Dr. Fjellman," and then in the first sentence they say something about some of our products or our recent news, then I say, this is a person that A, is addressing me correctly, and B, actually knows something about our company. That's when I pay attention to the email. If I just get a "Dear Sir," "Madam," or something like that, it almost goes to the waste bin immediately. But I think all of you probably know that and do the same thing. The second bullet here on slide 11 is you should research specific people and try to find videos of them speaking about their work or news articles and tweets from these people. This you can decide how much time you yourself have and you and your colleagues have to do this, whether you want to do this before the first contact or first positive reply from someone, or if you want to do it after. I did a bit of both when I went to Mexico. For some of the companies that I researched and I saw that they were a really, really good fit, naturally I got quite excited about those companies, and I obviously just did more research on them and looked up the individuals. But that really depends on how much time you have. But I would strongly suggest that once you do have a positive reply from someone, that you do spend a lot more time researching the individuals that you're talking to or emailing with. Okay, so I'm going to move to a good example here. Do we have Biomod on the line? No, we don't have Biomod on the line. Okay, I will speak about Biomod on the as a good example. So if we go to slide 12 here.
Ted, before you proceed, we have a couple of questions that people have posed regarding your previous section. I think they're
great.
Quite good questions. So here from the chat, by the way, Ayhan is present in the call. He's just not able to use his microphone at the moment, but he asks, is there a specific platform for getting in contact with UK executives, or are we going to communicate over emails? The second question comes from Jan. What will happen if none of our potential partners reply to our emails? If we've given company or institution names and some of them have not replied, what exactly will happen? Will this risk our trip to the UK?
Okay, so two questions there I hear. Okay, in regards to the first question around the platform, the best use is email. So there are some ways to find these companies. So actually in one of the following slides, I'll give some examples of what TechU has done in terms of outreach to trade associations. Most of these trade associations have online membership directories. These directories are really excellent. You will find specific companies there, what they're doing, what they're working on, obviously the link to their website and so on. So you'll be able to find the company and then also the emails of specific people through that. And then the platform we use is email. So we're not going to use any other type of partnering platform. In fact, a lot of these exist usually for conferences here in the UK. But the truth is that most people revert back to email because that's just what they check every day. So it's definitely the best way to communicate is via email. Then what I would suggest is if you get a positive response, one of the first things you do is you try and get them on the phone as quickly as possible. Some people make the mistake of having too much email exchange forward and back, and you really waste about 2-3 weeks just emailing 2-3 times because the time it takes to reply. But if in your first email you say, we'd be happy to jump on a call to discuss this further, and then in your second email you actually say, well, how about this, or that you give 3 different times for them to get on a call, that's the best way in my opinion. So I hope that answers your question. In the second question was, what if nobody replies? Well, we have a two-pronged approach where TechU is doing outreach through these trade associations, as well as we're asking you to make some direct contacts that we then follow up with. So first of all, I don't think you'll get no replies at all. And if it does look like you get very few replies, then TechU staff is going to help you in a lot more detail. So basically, those of you who are doing very well yourself and you found a lot of specific people, if you use a good email template, that's in English, and if you make any modifications, which of course you should, you can run them by us so that the English is perfect. I don't think you're not going to get any replies. Not if you email, at least 20 organizations. You will definitely get some replies. But to answer your question completely, let's say in the very rare case that for some reason you only get, 1 or 2 replies, or you even get no replies, then you'll still come on the trip. You'll still get to meet companies here. But I reiterate, of course, we will help you to actually get in contact with people ahead of the mission. I do think it's a failure both on our part and your part if we don't have any specific meetings set up before the trip, but it does not exclude you from coming on the trip.
Ted, would you be able to say something about what level of executives is best to contact? So if you try to contact someone very high up, they might actually, they have executive assistants that discard emails and don't pass them on. Would you be able to say something about that?
Yeah, in my experience, it is perfectly okay to email the top executive. But what I always do is I copy mid-level manager as well. So, for example, I might say, let's say, I don't know, just pick a name. If it was myself, I would say, "Dear Dr. Ted Fjellman," or "Dear Dr. Fjellman and colleagues. I have been researching your website. I'm part of this mission, this UK government-sponsored mission that's coming to the UK on the 12th to 14th of March. I would be very interested in meeting with you or any of your colleagues, if possible. And you can read more information about us at blah, blah, blah. That's a very short and sweet email to the CEO. If I got that in my company, then what I would do is I would forward that to my VP for business development, and she would make the arrangements for a meeting. Now, if you know who the VP for business development is, then the business development people are the right people to contact. But if you can't find that on the website, or if it's too small, or actually usually if it's a very large company, they don't have it. Then you just have to contact the people that you do find. However, if you really only find an inquiries at such and such or info at email, don't send that to them. Then contact us and say, this company is really interesting. I found the CEO or the people, but I don't have any email contact with them. Then that's when we will find out through the trade associations the actual email. So we'll help you find the email of the right people. I'm not sure I answered the question perfectly there, though. To get back to who is the right person to contact is, if you find a business development person, somebody that has business development in their title, so that is a director of business development or vice president business development or CBO, chief business officer, then those are the right people to contact. If you don't find someone with business development in the title, then you can go to the CEO. If you are, nevertheless, despite all the things I said earlier in the slides, you are going to contact a very large organization, then you can there often is an international department or a communications department. So it might be worthwhile to look at people within that department to contact. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they also call them external affairs in large companies. So if you look for titles that are called external affairs, that's also a possibility. That's often the case with universities, for example. They have external affairs. Or yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Cindy, any more questions? These are good questions.
I think that is all we have for now.
No. Okay. Good. So, Ayhan, I'm going to use you as an example. I hope that's okay. And then everybody else can can get a good feel for what it's like to prepare well. So if you go to slide 12, of course, you are the people who know your company best. We can help you to find companies, but really, even though I have a healthcare background, I still don't know exactly what your technology is, or exactly what the best market areas are for you to go into. So here, Ayan and his team actually created their wish list of companies that they wanted to meet with. And I think, Ayan, judging from our previous talks, some of these are probably organizations that you met at the conferences you came to at the UK. Others are probably ones that you have just researched online. So I suspect it's a combination here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch the screen actually to the Google Doc, because this is a screenshot from the Google Doc that probably all of you recognize. You use this Google Doc for your own company to provide the information that Burak, our communications officer, and the others use to create your online profiles. So those are still live, and you can still add contacts to those. So let me exit this presentation, and I hope you can still see my screen. I'm going to go, I'm sorry. Where are you, Biomod? Here we go. Okay, can everybody see the Biomod T-DEB Newton Fund company profile in front on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So here is a section called Target Partners, and you all fill this in, but this is a specifically good example of somebody having filled this in. So well done, Biomod. Here you showed organizations and societies that you were interested in. You showed UK telehealthcare. You showed the contact person that you recognized, the managing director for business development, Jerry at UK telehealthcare, as well as a second person. So this gives us at TechU a lot of chances to look up these people and see if they are indeed the right people. Contact also helps us if somebody at the trade association knows these people. So this is extremely useful. You then went on to show adapted living. Again, contact person, Tony Kennedy. You have the email address there. You found Alzheimer's Organization UK. You found the Stroke Association, a university, Kiel University, which actually I know a little bit about. So that's also useful. Then you showed a different section. So the previous section was organizations and societies. This section is health support service providers. Again, you showed several different companies here: Birdie Care, Voyage Care, AGM Healthcare, Ask Jules, Leonard Cheshire Disability. It's, and all with contact persons and emails where you could find them. So it's very good indeed. B2B business, R&D partners, you showed Sense UK. Here is, if I were to give one suggestion here, you should probably find more in this category, but overall this is very good. Integrators and distributors, so you showed some organizations here that are ideal to improve the current product value, providing customers by forming bundles with your PingBit product. So you even thought about what these organizations could do together with you, and you've provided all of them. So this is an example of where you as a company have made our life at TechU much, much easier. And of course, the easier it is for us, the more we can help you. Because we also have limited time and limited resources, but this is extremely valuable. So if all of you can do something similar like this, and you don't have to upload them all in one go, you can add, whenever you find a new company, add it to your profile, and we will go in periodically and have a look there and make a note of which ones were contacted. And if you contact any of them using the template, as we'll talk about in a moment, as long as you copy us on that, and all emails, we would very much like you to copy nana@techu.org at least. Then that means we have a track. Sorry, I'm just going to take a bit of water here. Yeah, we can track what's going on. Any questions on this part so far?
No.
No. Okay, I'm going to go back to our presentation. Okay. Right, so back to the presentation. Let's move to slide 13.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you going to share the document with us with the list of companies?
The one from Biomod?
Are you going to share with us the document?
I'm going to share the presentation with you. Definitely, yes. I think the list of
And
companies
also with other partners. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing that we're going to avoid, of course, is I just use Biomod as a good example here. What we're going to avoid is several of you contacting the same people. So we need to manage that. So whenever you're putting up organizations on your company profile, you have to put, if it turns out that you're contacting the same organization, that's when TechU will step in and email them on behalf of several of you. So I use Biomod as an example here, but I please ask you not to contact any of the companies that I showed you now that were on Biomod's list, because of course Biomod found out about them and will contact them first. If indeed some of those are very relevant to you as well, then just let us know and we'll contact them on behalf of both of you. But just in fairness to Biomod, we shouldn't contact any of those companies separately, because then you will be actually hurting both yourself and Biomod by sending several emails to the same company. Okay, slide 13. So in the following section, I'm going to give some specific guidance on the first contact and the follow-up to the first contact. So this is email, but before I go into this, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what we at TechU are doing. So slide 14. We're using a two-pronged approach to find partners. Okay, the first one is that TechU staff have been contacting trade associations as well as some other organizations, but mostly trade associations for outreach. What that means is some of these that you can see on this slide are actually going to co-host or be present at some of the meetings and spaces that we will have available for you during your trip. So we're going to be traveling mostly around London and southeast of England. And a lot of these organizations are based in London, of course, because London's the capital. These trade associations are representing many hundreds of companies, and they know those companies very well. So what the TechU staff have been doing is contacting them, telling them about you, showing them the company profiles that we had. That's why Cindy and Nana were so adamant about you getting your profiles ready, is that we could only really tell the trade associations about you once we had those profiles ready. Now they are, and we've actually had some positive feedback from several of these. I've shown all of these four that I'm showing here are organizations that we have contact with and that are interested in helping you and us to find UK partners. You can take a proactive approach as well as part of this. So don't just rely on TechU staff to make these contacts on the trade associations. What you can do is you can go on some of these links. And again, we will share this presentation with you. If you, for example, link on the Bioindustry Association, I've provided the link here for the membership directory. The same thing for the Oxford Bioscience Network, that's the membership directory, and also the ABHI, for those of you who are more in the medtech and health tech space. That third bullet will be extremely useful because that's a member search for healthcare and health tech companies. So there are several hundred companies on the other side of those links, and you can read up about those UK companies and find the ones that you want to partner with. The fourth bullet is actually the British In Vitro Diagnostics Association. So for those of you who are in the diagnostic space, we've contacted them, and they are also interested in collaborating with us, with TechU. However, they don't have an open membership directory. They are a little bit more old school. So they actually, in order to see the director, you have to become a member yourself. So in that sense, you're going to have to just look at some of their old conferences and so forth and see, what companies have been presenting and so on. But more news on that in the coming week or so when we get more information from BIVDA, as they're called, and hopefully we'll get access to a membership directory through them. Maybe they'll make an exception and give it to us. So that's what TechU is doing. And that's taking up a lot of our time, and it's going to help us to have really good meetings when you come to the UK. Now, what you need to do is, with the company profiles live and this first outreach to the trade associations done, you should send the first email, and our TechU staff will follow up on that. So as well as us reaching out and finding partners through the trade associations, we will want you to send an email to some of the people that you have identified and some of the people that we find for you. And the reason we want you to make the first email contact is because that will allow us as TechU staff to follow up in a shorter amount of time without you seeming to chase these people. So I'll give you the example. Again, if I'm the CEO of Precarium, which I am in the UK company, and I get contacted by, I don't know, let's say a delegation coming from Malaysia, and some company from Malaysia wants to meet with me, then usually what I'll do is I'll just, okay, seems like an interesting email, I'll flag it. Maybe I'm really busy, I'm about to run to a meeting, I just put a flag on it. And then maybe unfortunately I forget about it for 1 or 2 days or 3 days or even a week, even though it was interesting. It's just I'm busy, and Malaysia is not the first thing I thought about. Then, but if I 2 days later get another email from the same Malaysian company, I might follow up, but I also think, oh, well, this Malaysian company seems a little bit,
Yes.
pushy, right? So it's much better if 2 days later I get an email from the government representative from the UK that says, you were, just following up on the email by such and such Malaysian company, just to let you know that we are here to help facilitate this meeting with you if you're interested. Then I actually have a very positive feeling, because I say, not only is this Malaysian company interested in me, they actually have the support of the UK government. And this is a real thing, right? So that's the process that we're going to follow, is that we're doing this work with the trade associations. You're going to send an initial email, and the TechU staff are going to follow up on that. Maybe you'll get a direct reply and we don't have to do lots of follow-up, but usually we're going to have to do a follow-up from the TechU side, and that will help you to get the first contact with these organizations. Does that make sense? I think most everybody's muted, but I take that as possibly a yes. At least if you have any questions, we'll continue to do that. As part of this email, the last 3 bullets on this slide is update your list of specific companies and the people on your online company profile. So I've talked about that in the previous slide. We'll now go and show you a first email format. It's perfectly okay to change, but we can help you with the English if needed. And as I mentioned, we will follow up to your email, which will increase the chances of a speedy positive response. So let's move on to the next slide, slide 15, and just remember something about the UK people when you make the first contact. It is much better to be too formal than too informal. I think this is not a problem. I think Turkish culture is very formal as well. When you contact, you use a like Ekin Bey, or you use the Mr. and Miss and so forth, and you're very formal in your first exchange. I think keep that. It's much better to err on the side of caution and be more formal than too informal. So definitely no, good day, mate, or hey, how's it going? There's nothing like. But I'm sure all of you know this. So. It's very important that you introduce your company in brief and the reasons for your contact as soon as possible in the first 1 to 2 sentences. And then in terms of the email, it's much better if you feel like you're getting itchy feet and you're not hearing back from a certain company, don't write back to them straight away. Contact us and say, look, I'm a little bit concerned. I really, really want to meet with this particular company, but they haven't written back to me. Can you help us? And then TechU will help you to recontact company. In fact, again, we can also call the company. This is a small thing that I didn't write down, but myself, when I get a phone call with a strange country code from somewhere far away that I don't know about, I usually let it go to voicemail. But if I get a phone call from somebody I know, or if somebody in the UK, then I'm more likely to take it. Why? Because people always get phone calls that are important from within the UK that they don't necessarily have stored in their phone. But if it's something from far away on the other side of the world, they know it's not something urgent because they're not expecting a phone call from Turkey or from Malaysia or somewhere. So it's much better for you to tell us, look, I really want to follow up with this company, and then we will give them a phone call or a follow-up email. And then the second portion of this slide, 15 here, is it's better to be too brief than too lengthy. If you put a long email, even if it's a good email, people will start reading it and say, okay, this is interesting, but they'll just flag it and say, I don't have time to read it right now, I'll read it later. And then they forget about it. So it's much better to write a very short email with 3-4 sentences, maximum 1 paragraph with an intro and an ending. And maybe a link for them to read more, than to write several paragraphs and try to explain everything about your company in the first email. That's definitely a mistake. So the last point, so it's just to write very short sentences, get to the point in the first 2-3 sentences, and provide only one link for anyone who wants to know more. And that's what we've created the T-DEB project website for. So your profile is there. You should link to your specific profile, so they can directly click on that. They'll see your profile, they'll see who's coming, they'll see what area you're in and what your innovations are and what your partnering interests are. That's why we try to make that profile so crisp and to the point as possible. Also, they remember that the tdebproject.com website has other sections that will be useful to UK companies. So if they click on that, they'll also have that tab in the top right that says why Turkey, which is definitely a question that a lot of UK companies will ask themselves. Why should I be interested in doing work with Turkey? And we've tried to address that there and show to them that, people don't even know how big Turkey is. They don't know that there's, as many Turks as there are Germans, for example. They really don't know that. So there are a lot of things that the UK people don't know and need reminding of or even educating on. Okay, let's move to slide 16. So let's some details here, and I'll give you in the following slide 17 a specific email actually. But it's really important to have the proper title. So if you find out about the person that they have a PhD or they're a medical doctor, you should address them as doctor. Otherwise, Mr. or Miss. It doesn't matter if a woman is married or not, anyway, we live unfortunately in a sexist society still. There's no difference between Mr. if they're married or not. But with a married or unmarried woman, you can still use MS. It's fine. Don't use dear sir, madam, or get the wrong title, and definitely don't use first names. Don't say hi Steve or hi David, because that's not, people think that's too familial, and they only do that with people they already know. Start immediately with something specific. For example, I read with interest your article on, or I viewed with interest your presentation on something. And then they know, okay, these people have actually done some research on my company. The third bullet here is that introduce your company, not yourself, okay? It's important to just introduce what your company is. And then in the second sentence, you go into some detail on that. So for example, XYZ company is a biotech or medtech or e-health company. You want to call, if your area is very similar to the company you want to meet with, which I guess it mostly will be, use the same nomenclature as they use on their website. So if some people call themselves health IoT, other people call themselves e-health, use the same terminology that they use so that they recognize that you're in the same space. And then say immediately that you're visiting the UK on the 12th to 14th of March. Of course, you're arriving on the 11th, but you'll really only be meeting them on the 12th to 14th. So that's the time when you'll be able to meet. So that's what's important to the UK side. And tell them that you're coming under the guidance or auspice. That's a complicated or maybe not so known word, but it means under the kind of guidance of UK Turkish Newton Fund program. And then you go immediately into asking if you or one of your colleagues will be available for a brief phone call to discuss if there are mutual interests that would warrant a meeting 12th to 14th of March. That way you get as quickly as possible to the point where you get them on the phone, and that's when you have a chance to actually answer all of the questions quickly. And then finish with a sentence about more information. You can read more about us, our reasons for visiting the UK, and our program at, and then you could provide, I just used here Biomod as an example again, the tdebproject.com/company Biomod. But of course, any company, your particular profile should be on there. And then you look forward to hearing from them. So it's important also to leave them with a way to contact you by phone if they want to, if they're very keen. In fact, I think if you obviously get a phone call from a +44 number, pick it up because that's likely one of the companies that you've contacted. I don't know what it's like in Turkey if you're comfortable giving out your own mobile phone numbers. If you're not, then don't do it. But if you are, I think that's a great thing to do. And if you are giving out your mobile number, actually write that it's a mobile, because then people might even text you. It's not uncommon for people to text. In fact, fairly common in the UK now is that people will try and phone. If they don't get a hold of you, instead of leaving a voicemail, they'll often text. And that's the same. It's a good thing for you as well. If you eventually get a hold of someone's mobile in the UK, if you phone them and you don't get a hold of them, better than leaving a voicemail is actually to write a text message saying, dear Dr. such and such, I just tried to call you. When would be a good time to speak about our mutual interest for the T-DEB program, or something like that. All right, let's move to slide 17. I'm conscious of the time here. We're almost finished and I want some Q&A. I will send this slide deck to all of you. In fact, Nana or Cindy will send it. But here you can see that I've just given you an example of an introductory email. Dear Dr. Wallace, I've read with interest your company's recent news about your R&D award for your health IoT product, Senior Care Plus. This is obviously just an example. You've looked up a company, you found out that they have some, just got a new award, or they just launched a new product, and you mention that you know about that. Then you say our company, and of course give the company name, is also developing products for senior care, and we're visiting the UK on the 12th to 14th of March under the auspice of the UK Turkey Fund Program. Would you or one of your colleagues be available for a brief phone call to discuss if there are mutual interests that would warrant a meeting 12th to 14th of March? Then you say you can read more about us, our reasons for visiting the UK, and our program at, and then the link. You may also contact Dr. Cindy Regalado or Ms. Nana Toto CC, who are based in London and are facilitating our visit. That's a really important thing. The fact that Cindy has a PhD, myself have a PhD. The reason I didn't include myself here is because I won't have the time to follow up on all of them, but I'm keeping in close contact with Cindy and Nana about all of your interactions. So if you copy them on this, that's the best way to go. And then the company sees that you have people in London working with you, and I think that's really important. We look forward to hearing from you. Best regards. And then Mr., or if you yourself have a PhD, of course, Doctor, that's very useful. And then that whatever your title is and the company name. And then, as I mentioned again here, if you're comfortable giving your mobile number, write that it's your mobile phone, and the country code, of course, for Turkey, so that they can contact you if they wish by phone. Also, even if they won't contact you by phone straight away, if your original email in your signature, you have your phone number, that's extremely useful for future interactions, because most people, they forget, or they just go back in their inbox and search for the original email. And if your phone is in the signature, that makes life for them much easier. And you want to make life for them as easy as possible. Okay, Cindy, how are we doing? Should we move? Should I skip some of these things, or should I go? How much time have you set aside?
We have until 9:30, so I think the following slides are quite useful information. If you can continue maybe with a little bit of speed, but still cover the materials that you have left, I think it will be really useful. Again, okay. If people have been really good at asking their questions through the chat, so we might have some Q&A at the end, but I think when questions come up, they've been writing them on the chat.
Okay, good. All right, excellent. I'll move on then. If we have all the questions in the chat, then we won't forget any of the questions, and I'll leave ample of time for that. All right, slide 18. what material should you have ready if a UK company wants more information? So it's really important, as soon as you're sending out these emails or we're making contact on behalf of you, the UK companies are going to immediately want to know more about your company. The online profile is really just the first check, right? It's is this something that's a good fit, or enough interesting to read more? So that means you must have a slide deck in English ready to send back. You don't want to wait until they contact you to start making that slide deck. You want to have that slide deck ready. And that's a 10 to 15 slides presentation. Or alternatively, if you already have a flyer of some sort, maybe a 2-pager or maximum 4-page type flyer or brochure in English, then that's fine as well. But what's important is that it shows something of these 3 bullets that I'm have on the slide here. It should show some data supporting your innovation. So if you've done some testing with your device, or you've done some drug testing with your innovation, then put some simple data, not complicated data, but put some simple data in your flyer that shows that it's worked in some way. It's also important to show any achievements of the company. Again, I get back to the original. If you have done any deals internationally already, if you've sold your product internationally or collaborated with someone, it's really important you put it here, because that will really raise the chances of the interest from the UK company. And if you have a slide deck, maybe not so much on the flyer, but if you have a slide deck, I would show the team and the resources slide. And what I mean by resources there is you should put what your team is, but also what laboratories or capabilities you have. So if you do have your own laboratory and you have the ability to make prototypes or things like that, it's very useful to write that, because again, that helps the UK company to see that you are not just a person with an idea and some IP, but you actually have laboratory and capabilities to do a collaboration project, and they'll be very interested in that. Will can help you with that. So if you make a slide deck, send them to us for comments. Some of you have already done that. We had the technical calls, and then you sent us some slide decks afterwards. But not all of you have done that. So please do that as soon as possible. Okay, slide 19. Your research and preparation doesn't stop when you get the first contact. This specific slide you need to include a specific slide for the organization that's contacted you. So if you have your 10 to 15 slide presentation ready, what you will do is you'll add a slide either at the beginning or the end of that presentation that's specific to the organization that you're emailing with. And what I would also suggest is, if you have a cover slide for your presentation, is change the cover slide to say, background information for discussion with, and then the UK company name. That way, on the very first cover slide, the UK company sees, oh wow, this Turkish company has actually created a slide deck specifically for us. That really increases your chances of being taken seriously, because it also increases the quality and puts a kind of a demand on the UK side to also put in some time and effort to make it a bespoke interaction, and that will only be seen as a positive thing. You might think that implies that the UK company has to do more work, but actually, even though it's more work for the UK company to create a bespoke one, they will see it as a very positive thing. So trust me on that one. It's a really good idea to make your presentation specific to each company, but make it simple for yourself. Change only the cover slide and one extra slide maybe at the end that says, what are our potential mutual interests? And then you just have some bullets on areas that you think you and that company have mutual interests and might want to collaborate on. And again, TechU can, and I myself can take a look at that if you want, when you're ready. So I would go into more depth on the UK company that is interested and identify research that company. So in order to make those bullets on the slide deck as specific as possible, you need to find out what are the technologies and know-how that the UK company has that could be of use to you. You need to find out, and you need to think about your own specific technologies that you have that you think could fit with their work. So you could, for example, in your slide have 2 sections. You could even call it like these bullets. You could have technologies that you have that are of interest to us, technologies that we have that might be of interest to you. You could literally write it like that. I think that would be very clear. And the third point is any mutual product orientations that you could discuss for a joint R&D project. I recognize that some of you will be trying to work with organizations that are not the same as you. So for example, you might have a device that you want to test with an NHS trust. Now, obviously, the NHS Trust isn't an R&D organization like you are. They are a hospital, a set of hospitals. So there, you might rather want to write something like, you know, hospitals in Turkey have the following problems that you might also have. Our technologies could be useful in, or we think it would be worthwhile to discuss the following areas. And then you have a couple of bullets of various product orientations that you could discuss. Okay, we're nearing the end now. On slide 20, I just want to talk about the next steps, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So the next step is that we will continue our outreach campaign here at TechU with the trade associations and also other networks. If you have not completed your list of contacts in your Google Doc company profile, then do so as soon as possible, but don't wait to upload all. What I mean by that is just upload companies as you find them. And we will check it periodically. Then use the above email template. We will, of course, send you this presentation to start sending emails to companies, and always copy, and the email is further down there, nana@techu.org. And you may also want to copy Cindy, so c.regalado@techu.org. You also will have all of that information sent to you. So aim to send at least 20 emails to 20 organizations so that you might get about 4 to 5 good meetings set up. Remember that I myself, when I went to Mexico, I sent about 20 and I got 3 really good meetings at the end. But I was very happy with that. So don't be disappointed if you only get 3 meetings. If those 3 meetings are really good organizations and you've already had a good contact with them, that will be really useful, because they might actually invite you to come and see their facilities. If you've had a lot of good interaction via email before, this is not just going to be a half an hour or a 1 hour meeting. It might actually be you going over to them and meeting with them. And that's important for our discovery trip, is that we have a program that's useful for all of you, and you can stay with the group the whole time if you wish. But if you find a particular partner that is very interested in you and you want to move ahead faster, then you can nip out or leave the whole group for some period of time and go to that organization's facilities. But of course, that has to come from the UK side. And the only way for you to get that is if you create that bespoke interaction that we spoke about, where you show that you've taken a great interest in the specific things that they have in their company. The 4th bullet here is that our staff will follow up with after about 2 to 3 days of being copied on your email. So if you sent that initial email, we'll follow up as mentioned before. And I reiterate, this is to avoid the situation where the UK company feels like you are chasing them. And I think, judging from the previous feedback from you, that makes a lot of sense. The important thing is to copy Nana on this, but also copy Cindy if you wish. But at least one of us needs to be copied so we can track of what's going on and help you in the best way. And if we are contacting organizations for you, we will copy you on it as well. And I think we have the main contact is the person that's coming on the trip. If there are 2 people coming from your organization, which I think is a rarity, and we want to actually avoid that. But if you can and need to have a second person, then tell us which is the main contact for you, because we only want to have a single person be the contact point for the UK side. Okay, and that's it. Now we're on slide 21, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have.
My name is John, and I just asked that before we send an email, should we send a draft to you in order to check it is okay or not? sample.
Yes, a sample. You obviously don't need to send us every single email before you send it. That will be too much for us. But yes, if you take the template that we provide through this presentation, you modify it, send that one to us. If you make small changes to that later on, that's fine. Obviously, I think we have selected all of you because you are good at English. But if some of you need a little more help, we're here to help you. But yes, we're happy to look at your first template.
Yes, only the first one.
Only the first one, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, Cindy, you said that. Are you going to go through the ones in the chat, or shall I look at the chat myself, Cindy?
We have not received, I think, additional questions through the chat apart from John's question just now.
Okay.
And one more question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
And when I was talking to Cindy, we mentioned about our two R&D projects for the innovation part in the form, but I believe that they're still on pilot progress, so we are still developing them. So is it better to write our proved innovations, our proved works to the innovation part?
No, I think you want to include in the innovations the projects you want to collaborate on. So so it's better if it's a unproven technology that you want to develop, then you say we are at the early stages of development of the following. You just say early stage. Then you can write at the end of your email. You could write, for more information about our other completed product development programs, or for a view of our products that are already on the market, even if you have that or have already passed the prototype stage, see, and then you provide a link for your specific products.
Okay,
that
for
way,
example, okay, yes.
Go ahead, John. Yeah.
I'm sorry. For example, we really still want to collaborate on track and trace, drug track and trace system with UK companies. So it's better to write this project in the innovation part at first, I guess, which is the most important thing for us.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because they will go down the list. They'll look at the first thing, and the first thing is the thing they're going to remember the most. So you want them to remember you for the thing you want to collaborate on.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate, Jen, because we've talked about this before, you do want to have in your profile
yes, I know.
the innovations that you're interested in developing, and companies will not think less of your company because you are presenting things that are still in development. As we talked before, when you mention your other successful projects and programs, they will see that you are a company with a lot of experience. So you shouldn't shy away from presenting projects that are still in development. In fact, that is a very good thing, because it is they have high potential for research and development. But as Ted said, it's important that you do mention the great background and experience that you do have in order to sustain research and development with the previous experience and coverage that you've had.
The confusing part is that yes, we developed many projects as we discussed, but the main collaboration point is that to make collaboration on, for example, our flagship projects such as drug track and trace and national healthcare system, and the others will come soon. For example, our R&D projects, they are still on pilot, and also we have other software projects which is very approved in Turkey. Because of that, I asked this: should I write the pilot ones, or should I write the approved ones?
Yeah, so I think you have your answer now with the pilot.
Yeah, it should be the ones that you want to collaborate on.
Okay. Anyway, I will send a draft to you so on email so we can check it if I write the right thing or not not wrong thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yes. Any questions from anyone else? Has the presentation been clear? Was it helpful? Can I ask anybody who thought how many of you just say yes in the thought that you learned something you didn't know before?
Actually, it was a really nice presentation, clear presentation. I have very few question marks in my mind. Now it's okay.
Okay, and others, you feel the same way?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. All right, any other questions? It's actually very good that a lot of you are using the mute button. That's good. But right now, if you are trying to speak, I'm not hearing anybody.
They're all writing yes in the chat. Ted, it was very helpful. Yes, thank you. Thank you. It was very fruitful. No questions here.
Okay, that's good. That's good. All right, so I think we're making good time here. I am going to stick around for a couple more minutes on this because we have until 9:30. So if anybody thinks of any questions, I'll be here for another couple of minutes. But if anybody feels like this was very clear and you want to move on and do other things, or you just get cracking on finding out more contacts, you're happy to leave the webinar now if you want to.
I have one question left. As the trip will be on 12th and 14th of March, so it means that we almost have 1 month and 20 days, something like that. So it is enough or not, the timing, I mean?
Yes, the time is good. January is a good time to send out emails like this. There's absolutely no point in sending emails before January. That's why we didn't do it. So because people are busy in December with the Christmas and everything as well in the UK. So sending out emails now, this is now the second to last week in January, or pretty much the last week in January. This is a good time. People have just they probably came back from their holiday in the second week of January. They've just dealt with all of the new things they need to do in their company in the second and third week of January. So now is a good time, actually. Their calendars are still fairly open, and the trip is still, in March. It's not in February, so it still feels far enough away for them to make a decision. Yet it's close enough to say they need to deal with it now. If the trip was in June, they would say, okay, well, I'll deal with this later. But the fact that it's in March, you should get answers fairly quickly, I hope, if there is an interest.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I think that, again, I have to congratulate you all on making good company profiles. I know it took some time to make those company profiles, but I think our initial feedback from the trade associations is that they can quickly, they ask questions very quickly. They saw which areas you were involved in, and they came up with some good suggestions of potential meetings that we could join where there are other companies already present. So in other words, seminars or lunchtime seminars. So some of them fit very well with our schedules, others don't. But the main take-home message here is that there is interest from the trade associations. The political climate in the UK is very unsteady at the moment with Brexit. I think you all know that. But that means that companies want to get on with work internationally. They know that they need to collaborate with other countries post Brexit. Also, the government and trade associations are keen to do things outside of the EU because of that. So I think it's a good time, and hopefully we'll get a lot of responses. But more important than a lot of responses is very good, fitting responses and the only way for us to do that is if you work with us to research the UK companies in as much detail as possible and give us specific companies and, if possible, even specific people. That will be the best outcome.
Okay. And the other question is that the point of this program is not only to help the Turkish companies, but also in the UK companies, right? To develop their self.
Exactly. Yes. So we as TechU, we made the bid to win this contract to help the UK government to do this, and we chose to focus on Turkey first. And I think that's why we won the bid, because we said we're going to go and do workshops in Turkey. We're going to find the best Turkish companies, and that's you now. You're one of 3 cohorts. The other 2 cohorts are in the digital economy and the environmental technology space. But you represent some of the best healthcare, innovative young healthcare companies in Turkey. And now our objective is equally to find the same UK companies. But we're not going to take any UK companies to Turkey unless they have a specific interest in one of you from your cohort.
Yeah, of course.
So some people think we're going to do the same thing in reverse in Turkey, but actually I'm going to switch here to the slide here, slide 24. If you're still watching the presentation, you can see the project flow. So we're in here in the UK discovery trips in March to August 2019. So yours is actually the first one in March. And then in phase 3 here, we're going back to Turkey, and there we're going to have this partnership accelerator. So the UK companies that you meet, one of them, the best one, will come to meet you in Turkey. If you're based in the town where we are, they'll be able to meet with you. Maybe they'll even take an extra day to go to you if you're in a different city, and they really will get to know you, and then we move forward. But yes, you're right. To answer your question, for us, it's really important that the UK company also gets something out of this. It should be a win-win for both.
Yes, mutual.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much for everyone. I can see in the chat some of you have said thank you and goodbye, and I say the same thing. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm really excited actually to work with you and to meet all of you. Some of you again in person, and some of you for the first time in person when we meet in March.
Okay, Ted. Thank you very much for this fruitful presentation. It will be very helpful.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.